That's f***ing weird.
What?
The life of your child.
I like it rough.
DMC Devil May Cry is a 2013 spin-off game from the popular series Devil May Cry. Now, after Devil May Cry 4 hit the shelves in 2008, it was received fairly positively, but was not as commercially successful as Capcom wanted, despite, by today's numbers, DMC 4 being their second most financially successful game. Capcom wanted to try something different, something that would appeal to Western audiences. In the late 2000s, action games had proved to be widely successful. You've got God of War, Uncharted, and Call of Duty, to name a few. So naturally, this influenced their later titles like Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, and Bionic Commando. Then we get to DMC Devil May Cry. Capcom teamed up with the UK studio Ninja Theory, whose previous works include Heavenly Sword, Kung Fu Chaos, and was actually a part of Disney Infinity's development to make the combat system. DMC Devil May Cry would be a soft reboot, so knowledge of the other games wasn't required to appeal to new audiences. Which brings us to the new and improved Dante.
I'm stronger. I'm smarter. And I got a bigger dick.
You can see where both Dante's personalities overlap, with both having a cocky and to a lesser degree the I don't give a fuck personality, but this Dante is a much younger, rebellious, and for more simple terms, an emo and edgy wanker. But this lines up with the game story's themes, like corruption, control, consumerism, and surveillance. Now, with this game getting a mixed reception due to Dante's redesign, the tonal shift, and the game being called a reboot, I'm gonna find out if it's actually that bad. The story starts with some bald knob on the phone threatening the president for money. Then he talks about how he will control everything through death. Then he gets a gust of Dante, who is right now getting smashed at a nightclub. He brings back two girls and gets freaky. Dante somehow wakes up with cuts on his back, so I'm not sure what else they're getting up to that night. Anyways, Dante gets a knock on his door, then shows his dong to some random chick who tells him he was reckless and the hunter is after him. Dante gets dragged into limbo by the demon hunter. And Limbo is like it's like Upside Down from Stranger Things, I think. I actually haven't watched it. Anyways, so Dante fights demons and goes and collects his shit from last night's hangover, reminisces of what could have been, and then kills the hunter. Kat pulls up and tells Dante that her boss wants to meet him. Dante, with zero convincing needed, heads off with Kat to meet up with Virgil. No, not that Virgil. This Virgil. Who are both part of an organization called the Order. Virgil explains that Dante has been lied to about his past and wants him to join the Order. Dante declines, but Virgil tells him he can show Dante who he really is, changing Dante's mind. The gang head to Dante's childhood home. Dante goes into limbo to uncover his secrets, remembers his family and Virgil being his brother. We then find out that Mundus actually killed Dante's mother and sentenced Sparta to eternal suffering. They leave. Virgil explains that the bond between an angel and demon is forbidden. And guess what? Dante's parents were angel and demon. So Sparta had basically betrayed the demon king, hence why Mundus killed Dante's mom and imprisoned Sparta. And Dante picks some new shit up along the way too.
That just seemed to drag on forever. Church.
And then, yes, more exposition. Virgil keeps running his mouth and explains that Mundus is simply a physical manifestation and not his true form, and he controls everything through death. He monitors everyone through CCTV operated by the News Corp called Raptor News. The soda's poisoning everyone, keeping them stupid. Close the Hellgate, Mundus becomes mortal. Ship Mundus off by taking down Raptor News and destroying the Virality Soda Factory to limit his power. Dante finally hits the news and is being framed as a terrorist and a sexual deviant. Dante and Kat head to the Virality Soda Factory to kill the succubus. Don't get excited like I did, I was very disappointed. Which produces the soda. So Dante cleans up the succubus, stopping the production.
Oh wow.
How the f did he hear that? Anyways, Mundus's dry humping comes to a halt when he feels his succubus dead, I don't know, and knows Dante is out to get him. Kat explains how she met Virgil through Limbo and that she was a foster child getting abused by a demon dad, which actually isn't super important. So now the gang head to Raptor News to shut it down, to further antagonize Mundus and get him away from the Hellgate. So Dante heads into Limbo and makes his way to the news tower, meets up with some funny looking bloke who asks Dante to fetch his eye in exchange for assistance to get Dante to the tower.
Who's there?
It is I.
Dante does so and keeps making his way up to the tower, unlocks Devil Trigger along the way. Dante is literally inside the news and smacks a shit out of Bob Vargas, whatever his name is, who is in fact not doing God's work. During the fight, Dante continues to be villainized on the news and is even accused of being a pedophile.
He definitely had pedophile eyes.
Also during the fight, we see that the Order's base of operation is being stormed by Law, and Kat and Virgil are in danger. After finishing Bob off, Dante heads to the Order to save Kat and Virgil. The building is swarmed with SWAT. Dante finds Kat and helps her to find Virgil. Skip, they find Virgil, but he insists on staying long enough to recover data.
We don't have time for this.
Enabling Kat to get shot and taken away. So Mundus then uses Kat as a bargaining chip for Dante to give himself up, and also calling him a Nephilim, which I probably should have explained before, but a Nephilim is someone who is both angel and demon. But Mundus doesn't actually know that Dante has a brother, let alone that his brother is a Nephilim. And that's also important because Nephilim are the only ones that can kill demon kings. Virgil doesn't really give a shit about Kat, but Dante does. Dante has the idea of getting the girl Mundus was dry humping before and sparing not her life, but Mundus's child's life. But once again, Virgil not giving a shit about Kat, he wants to use this as a means to get Mundus away from the Hellgate instead of using it as a bargaining chip to get Kat back. Dante stands his ground and Virgil eventually agrees with his plan. Now for probably the most visually appealing level, the nightclub mission. Lilith, Mundus' wife, sees Dante's presence as an opportunity to impress Mundus with Dante's corpse. Lilith's baby starts tweaking out, fight, smash some YouTube play buttons to get to Lilith, then she gives birth. I don't know what the f you'd call this. Anyways, some Resident Evil 8 type shit. The baby stores his mum in his stomach. What am I even saying? Dante smacks the shit out of the baby and spares Lilith and says he won't hurt her as long as she behaves. Everyone meets up at a dock to fulfill their end of the bargain. Virgil has a f***ing gun. Both Kat and Lilith slowly walk over, but Virgil ends up shooting the pregnant woman in the stomach anyways, causing a gunfight. Mundus loses his shit and sends a shockwave towards Dante and the gang. They escape. Later, Kat explains while Mundus had her captive, she left her body and explored the building Mundus is held up in, learning the ins and outs, telling Dante and Virgil that they need her to get to Mundus. Planning, hacking, climbing, why Virgil is a tech whiz, I don't know. Dante and Virgil make it to the Hellgate and draw Mundus out by taunting him about his dead child.
It was for revenge. I gotta tell you, killing your child like that, watching it explode into little wet chunks, hearing you scream like one of your little demon bitches, priceless.
Dante lures Mundus out and nearly gets killed. Virgil shuts the Hellgate, making Mundus mortal and colliding Limbo and the real world together. They throw Mundus off a building. He turns into something really big and looks really boring. They defeat Mundus. The world seems like it's in a worse state than it was before. Virgil reveals that he basically wants to take Mundus' place and rule over the humans. Dante's having none of that. They fight. Dante wins and spares Virgil because Kat wanted him to for some reason. Virgil leaves and the world is rubble and chaos. Alright, so now that you're all caught up with what DMC Devil May Cry is about, what are my thoughts on it? I think the idea is pretty cool. A demon controlling humans, not through brute strength or power, but through corruption, surveillance, probably a bit of political manipulation, and basically poisoning everyone with the virility soft drink. Look, as for Mundus' motive for being all bad and evil. Usually I would say that is a pretty shallow motive, but since Mundus is literally the devil, or he's a demon, I think that's pretty hard to argue. Let's talk about Dante. I don't think he's as bad as some people make him out to be in terms of his character. In saying that, he is not 100% that interesting either. His whole backstory with his mother and father being in a forbidden relationship, creating 2 children that are a hybrid of demon and angel, that's cool. That's an interesting idea. Mundus coming along and taking Dante's parents away gives Dante's story some kind of weight. They also never explain how they, whoever they are, lied about Dante's past or how they changed his memories. It sort of just happened. Dante does show some slight development in the story, going from loner and really only caring about himself to asking Kat about her past, showing an interest in her. I don't think Dante thinks of her romantically, but later he does insist on saving her when she is taken by the police, showing that by then he really cares about her. Which brings us to Kat. Kat is not super interesting. Her whole backstory is being an orphan and ending up with a abusive stepfather who was a demon, which enabled her to find out about Limbo somehow, I forget why. Her backstory is plot relevant because Dante is literally in Limbo for the entire game, and we need someone to know the ins and outs of Limbo. Next up is Virgil. Virgil loosely keeps some of his traits from his original self. As we saw by the end of the game, he wanted to rule and take Mundus's place, still having the desire for power, and could have probably been the next main villain in the sequel, which is totally going to come out. Now, the pacing of the overall story, it's pretty good. It's good. Never really felt like parts of it were going on for too long or not long enough. Overall, the story is just okay. I can see why original Devil May Cry fans weren't too happy, because they've been thrown into a modern dystopian instead of a story about a brotherly rivalry, finding your missus, or whatever the 5 was about. It's strange to take something already popular and has its identity, sort of strip it, and try and make something so drastically new out of it instead of just making something new. But story is just okay. Now we are going to discuss the gameplay. Now keep in mind, the only Devil May Cry games I've played all the way through is Devil May Cry 3, 4, and 5. And I gotta say, this game did have the most satisfying combat out of all of them. It is nowhere as in-depth as the other ones, because it was purposely dumbed down to appeal to the new Western audience, which is kind of insulting. Look, small things like needing 3 different inputs to send enemies upwards, it is now 1 button, and rolling is a lot less complicated. Not that it was complicated in the first place, but once again, dumbing shit down. There's an ability similar to Devilbringer from Devil May Cry 4, but instead of just bringing your enemies towards you, you can choose whether you go to them or they come to you. Throughout the game, you will obtain different weapons. You get 2 heavy hitters but slower, 2 weaker weapons but cover a lot of ground, and 2 extra guns. The shotgun and another gun I never used. Now the heavy weapons are known as the demon weapons, and they consist of an axe and fists. The axe has the most damage out of all the weapons. It can send enemies up from a range by slamming it on the ground, which can set up for air combos. The fist, when charged, can disrupt just about any enemy attack and is faster than the axe, but still does good damage. For the angel weapons, the scythe covers a lot of ground and keeps enemies up in the air for just about forever. And lastly, for the melee weapons, we have the shurikens. These also cover a lot of ground and is able to drag multiple enemies towards you, allowing for crowd control. As for the ranged weaponry, we have ebony and ivory, which is pretty self-explanatory. Passive damage from afar. The shotgun, it's a shotgun. And Kablooey, which is a stupid name, and I'm not going to talk about it. So yeah, heaps of weapons to choose from. Had a lot of fun with the heavy hitting ones, but did mainly use the sword. These are just lots of little things I'd like to talk about before wrapping this video up. Let's talk about the graphics. The game visually looks pretty good, about the standard for 2013. For the levels themselves, I'd say 90% of them were really dark, which did get a bit boring after a bit. I just think the overall art design is a step down from Devil May Cry 4. In terms of enemy variety, it is just okay. None of them stand out too much. I did like the Dream Runner, had a really cool design and was actually engaging to fight. Some enemies have a gimmick where you have to use certain weapons to damage them, like with the angel and demon weapons. The soundtrack is actually, I like it a lot. Obviously the sort of music's not for everyone, it is subjective, but two songs I thought I would mention is Throat Full of Glass, which plays during the intro, and Never Surrender. Also, I'd say the most boring fight design-wise is probably Barbagus. Now, while fighting a news reporter's head is kinda cool and funny, at the end of the day, you are just avoiding colored walls. I think a much more interesting fight would be going up against the version of Dante that Raptor News is trying to create, calling him a terrorist and a terrible person. You're literally fighting their narrative. I thought that would be a pretty cool idea. So, is DMC Devil May Cry that bad? The short answer is no. Playing through this for the second time, I was actually having a lot of fun. You know, the combat and the platforming was alright too. And even after I finished recording the entire game, I did go back for more. I was playing a bit of New Game Plus, so the combat, for me at least, is kind of addicting. So can I recommend it? If you are a Devil May Cry fan and it's on sale, yes, I can recommend it. It's still good fun, just don't pay full price. Look, even if you've got an Xbox 360 or a PS3 lying about, you can get yourself a hard copy for not that much. They're not that expensive. And there is also the definitive edition for PS4 and Xbox One. I'd say this game gets a solid 7 out of 10. The story's okay, the combat is really fun, there's lots of weapons, the movement is a step up. Mundus is bold, Virgil wears a fedora, and Dante is a pedophile.